Hey, what's good, everybody? I'd like to welcome you all to a brand new episode of the Boombox Guru, and I'm your host, LB. So, on today's episode, man, we're going to talk about my top three Slayer albums. Now, for those of you who may not know who Slayer is, they were a thrash metal band from Los Angeles, California. They formed back in 1981. Their most well-known, most famous classic lineup included vocalist and bassist Tom Araya, guitar player, lead guitar player, songwriter Kerry King, songwriter, lead guitar player Jeff Hanneman, and Dave Lombardo on drums. Although as years went on, they did go through a few lineup changes, but that's the most well-known and famous lineup. And they are also a part of the big four thrash metal, along with Metallica, Megadeth, and Anthrax. And these four bands were the biggest thrash metal bands in the genre. They were the first ones to get signed to major labels, and they sold a lot of records, which helped to propel thrash metal to a wider audience, which I guess for almost close to 10 years, up until the early 90s, man, thrash metal was very dominant, and it hit its peak. And they inspired a whole wave of other bands to come out. And Slayer is probably the most controversial out of the big four. You know, a lot of their records have been banned in certain countries. They didn't get a lot of radio play or video airplay because of the content of their music and so forth. But that controversy at the same time helped give them attention, and it helped them to sell more records. So with virtually no necessarily mainstream success, they managed to kind of be sort of like a mainstream band, you know, due to the controversy that surrounded them. But today I just want to talk about my top three albums that I really listen to a lot when it comes to listening to Slayer. You know, these are my three favorite albums that I listen to all the time. Anytime I'm on a Slayer kick, these are the ones that I go to the most. So without further ado, let's go ahead and kick this off with the first album, and that is none other than Rain and Blood, released in 1986, originally on Def Jam Recordings. And this album right here this was the first Slayer album that I ever heard. This was the first Slayer album that I ever bought. And what really inspired me, or what motivated me to buy this, was the fact that it came out originally on Def Jam Recordings. Anybody that knows anything about Def Jam Recordings, especially at this era, was the premier hip-hop label. You know, they were most known for Beastie Boys and, you know, LL Cool J. I don't think Public Enemy had really dropped just yet at that moment, but in a general sense, that's what Def Jam was known for. They was known for hip hop. So when I was around high school, I think I was in class, doing something in between my work, reading something on Wikipedia, and I was reading about Def Jam Recordings, and that's how I stumbled upon them talking about thrash metal band Slayer being signed to the label. Now I knew of the name Slayer. I knew that they were a metal band, but at that time I wasn't really well educated on the different types of metal and subgenres. To me, at that time, metal was just metal. But that particular article or whatever that I read is what really that's how I found out that Slayer had been signed to the label. And I know Rick Rubin was the one that did it, but it just really blew my mind that a thrash metal band and extreme metal band was signed to the premier hip-hop label, especially at that time in 1986. So that's what really inspired me to want to check out the album and eventually purchase it, man. But just a great record. You know, it's a groundbreaking album in heavy metal, in extreme metal, to be more specific. You know, this album still continues to be influential even to this day. A lot of subgenres were inspired by this. You know, death metal. A lot of early death metal bands looked at Slayer, specifically Rain and Blood, and this record is what really inspired them to go in that more direction, man. As a matter of fact, there's a song on this album called Epidemic that, if the guitars were down tuned just a little bit more, and maybe it had a little blast beats here and there, that could actually be a death metal song. But this record just inspired so many of those death metal bands. I know Alex Webster from Cannibal Corpse, he talked about how this album really inspired him when the band in the early years and so forth, man. As well as a lot of the second wave black metal bands, specifically the Norwegian black metal bands. I believe a lot of them were inspired by what they heard on Rain and Blood. And so many other thrash metal bands heard this record, and it just motivated them and inspired them to want to change their sound. If you listen to a lot of the second wave thrash metal bands, listen to their debut albums, you can tell that a lot of them were trying to like outdo Rain and Blood or be just as heavy and aggressive as Rain and Blood. But I think the only band that really came close to giving Rain and Blood a run for his money was Dark Angel with their second album. But just a groundbreaking record, man. One that still continues to be influential to this day. Even now, with a lot of these modern new thrash metal bands, some of them will play riffs, and I'll catch on. I'm like, hey, wait a minute, that's a Rain and Blood riff right there. So this album is still influencing so many other genres in metal. It's still talked about. It still makes the best of list of any albums, no matter what decade. It doesn't even have to be a heavy metal list. It could be just the best album of all time, and Rain and Blood is probably gonna be on that list somewhere, man. That's just how influential this record is, man. But definitely an album that, if you're somebody that's a metal fan, extreme metal fan, man, you definitely gotta have this in your collection, cause that's just what it is. It's just one of those albums where if you don't have it in your collection, somebody may give you a kind of a funny look, like, I don't know about that. But just a remarkable record, man, and one that still continues to be influential to this day, man. So yeah, that's Slayer, Rain and Blood, released in 1986, man. Oh yes, and before I forget, the album is very short. The album is only like 30 minutes long, because most of the songs on there are like, I think, like no longer than 2 minutes. So if you were somebody that owned a cassette version of Rain and Blood, you got both albums on both sides. You got the full album on both sides, which I thought was really cool, man. But yeah, groundbreaking record. All right, so next album is South of Heaven, released in 1988, also originally on Def Jam recordings. This would be their last one for Def Jam. As you know, Rick Rubin would leave, start his own label, and Slayer would follow suit. But with this record right here, man, this is also one of my favorites, because I like how Slayer, to me, with this record, they really showed that they were truly a band and that they knew how to write songs, because they didn't go the route that most people wanted them to. I guess a lot of people expected them to do Rain and Blood Part 2, but they didn't. They decided to go a different direction. In some ways, they kind of slowed things down a bit, especially with the title track, South of Heaven, because it starts off kind of like a slow, doomy song, like almost kind of Sabbathy in nature, man. But then towards the second half, it picks up a little bit with a mid-tempo type vibe, man. But most of the songs, they kind of slow things down a bit, kind of going like kind of doomy directions in some ways. But don't get me wrong, there's still some fast thrash metal songs on here, man. Maybe not in the same vein as Rain and Blood, but I just think that the songwriting on here is just more fleshed out. It's just more fleshed out. And the subject matter is also growing, because once again, Rain and Blood was the first record where Slayer really started to talk about real kind of issues that were happening actually in the world, aside from their earlier stuff where they were trying to just be evil and shock people. This album, South of Heaven, they go even further, man. There's a song here about abortion called Silent Scream, which is a fan favorite. Man, Tom Araya actually wrote the lyrics on that song, and let me tell you, if you sit down and actually listen to the lyrics and read the lyrics, man, Tom is a great lyricist in my opinion, because the imagery and how he vividly described the abortion process and everything, it's shocking, man. Like there's a reaction channel called Vin and Sorry, and yo, I know my friend Krista, if she watched this video, she's probably shaking her head now because I mentioned those two names. But yeah, there's a reaction channel called Vin and Sorry, man. I watched a video where they did a reaction to Silent Scream, and when Tom comes in and starts spouting out those lyrics, man, their expression is priceless. It's hilarious, man, how they just, their whole facial expression just changed. They're like, yeah, it's priceless, man. But so many great songs on here, man. Mandatory Suicide, which I believe they played that live, and that's a live staple. I want to say I heard that live when I saw them live 3 years ago. You see, Ghost of War is another great one. Dissident and Aggressor, which is a Judas Priest cover. They did a great job at covering that Judas Priest song. They did such a good job that sometimes I forget that it's a cover. It really fits the album. And let's see here. The last song, Spill the Blood, is awesome. Live Undead. What else is on here, man? Let's see. There's a lot of good songs on here. Behind the Crooked Cross. Just every song on this album. Every song on this album is just really great, man. It's from start to finish. Every song on this album from start to finish is just awesome, man. And I believe when this record initially came out, there was a small backlash because people were expecting them to do like Rain and Blood Part 2. But, I think as years have went by, or maybe not even years, but I think after a while, people started to really appreciate this record for the fact that they chose to take a risk and do something different, man, because to me, they just really showed that it was more to them than just being speed for speed's sake, like on Rain and Blood, and they really showed that, hey, we can write songs. We can write songs. We're not just a one-trick pony. It's the same thing that Metallica did when they did Ride the Lightning, Kill 'Em All was just all about speed, and being aggressive, but Ride the Lightning, man, they fleshed things out more. So to me, that's what South to Heaven did with Slayer, man. They just took things and fleshed it out more and just really defined their sound and really showed people that, hey, we are some real musicians that know how to play and we know how to write really meaningful songs with substance, man. It's not all about the speed. And they also showed with this record that you can be heavy and not be fast. You can be slow and heavy as well, man. So just a great record. One of my favorite album covers as well too. Really like the album cover. Just an all around record. I actually like this record more than Rain and Blood, but definitely one of my favorite Slayer albums, man. That I frequent quite often, man. Quite often because it's just really good, man. So yeah, South to Heaven. Released in 1988, originally on Def Jam Records, man. All right, so now we're getting down to the last one, and most of you by now probably already know what my last one is. So, Seasons in the Abyss, released in 1990. Yes, man. And I gotta say, out of the three, this would probably be my number one. This would be my number one. And the reason why is because I feel that Seasons in the Abyss is Slayer's most complete record. Because you're getting a lot on this record. You're getting that speed of Rain and Blood. You're getting the speed and aggression and brutality of Rain and Blood. But you're also getting the more varied and more diverse sound that they started to tack on South of Heaven. So you're getting a lot of that. You're getting a lot of that, and you're getting an evolution in the subject matter and topics as well. So what I like, another thing I like most about this record is that Tom wrote majority of the lyrics on here. So Tom takes a different approach because a lot of his lyrics, he tends to write about serial killers at this time, but he also takes a more of a social commentary approach to the lyrics. So a lot of his songs are actually talking about, real issues that are happening out in the world, like Expendable Youth, for instance, which is one of the, I would say a fan favorite on the album. It's about gang violence. These guys are from Los Angeles, so I'm pretty sure they know a little something about gang violence. Hallowed Point is a song, which I think is the most underrated song on the album. But that song has Tom describing what happens when you get shot by a hollow point bullet. And it's just amazing. Like his imagery, how he just vividly describes everything that happens from when the bullet penetrates you to everything that it's doing as it's tearing through your body and what it's doing to you as it's causing you this damage. It's just amazing. And then the way that the band, how the tempo kind of invokes a feeling of like, I guess, I don't know how, I've never been shot, hope I never do, but I guess maybe invokes a feeling of like adrenaline of what's happening when once that happens to you or whatever. It really gives a very great it really does a good job in invoking those types of emotions. And just so many great records on here, man. War Ensemble, which kicks off the album. Well, I think, yeah, that was written by Jeff Hanneman. Most of the songs on here were written by Jeff Hanneman and Kerry King, but Tom Araya just wrote most of the lyrics. But War Ensemble, man, when it first comes on, man, that opening riff kind of sounds similar to Angel of Death from Rain and Blood a little bit. So that's what I'm saying, that this album is giving you everything from those previous records, man. In a lot of ways, I kind of view Rain and Blood, South to Heaven, and Seasons in the Abyss as somewhat of a trilogy. To me, these albums form a trilogy, in my opinion, man. It was like, I don't know, I kind of feel like it was after Seasons in the Abyss, it was like the end of an era. And then, Divine Intervention and so forth was the beginning of another period. But it's just so many great songs on here, man. Seasons in the Abyss, the title track, one of Slayer's biggest songs. It's a heavy song, but it's slow. And a fan favorite, man, a live staple. I got to hear that song live as well when I saw him 3 years ago. And it was also the song where they shot their first music video as well. But so many great songs on here, man. Dead Skin Mask, which is about Ed Gein. Let's see, Skeletons of Society, man, which is a really dope song. I really like the kind of mid-tempo, well, it's not doomy or anything. I was about to say doomy, but I just like that mid-tempo vibe of it, man. It's really cool. Born of Fire is really cool. Temptation. I think Temptation was a song where Tom recorded 2 vocal performances. Like I forget how Tom described it, but he recorded one part and then Kerry King came in and was like, nah, I wanted you to come in on this part. And he sung that part, and somehow in the mixing, both vocal performances ended up together. So it's like Tom is like answering himself back on the vocals, man. But it was like a happy accident, man. It was something that turned out really cool. It wasn't intentional, but it ended up making the song even better, man. But so many great songs on this album, man. And this was the last one they did with Dave Lombardo for a while. He ended up leaving the band a couple of years later, or I don't know if he got kicked out. That's a video for a whole nother day. But yeah, Seasons in the Abyss, man, definitely my number one favorite out of the 3, because I just think that it's their most complete record. I actually had this on vinyl as well that I bought, I think about a year or 2 ago. I bought it on vinyl at a local record store that I used to go to. But just a great record, man. Just a great album. And I don't know, man. I feel like I just feel like Seasons in the Abyss was kind of the end of an era with Slayer, man. Don't get me wrong, the band continued on, but I just feel like that album kind of was the signal of like, okay, yeah, this is the end of that era. Because Lombardo was out of the band for a number of years after that, of course. But just a very complete record that I highly enjoyed, that I highly recommend for anybody to go check out, man. But yeah, that's it for this video, man. Those are my top 3 Slayer albums. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you're watching and you did enjoy this video, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up and give me a like. It helps give my videos more exposure here on YouTube. Also helps fight the algorithm, as well as hit the subscribe button, and also make sure you hit the bell so you'll be notified whenever I drop new content. Share the videos. Tell anybody that that may be interested in this type of content to go check me out. Share it with them. I want to give a shout out to all my subscribers. I appreciate everybody that's been watching and viewing my videos. Shout out to my new subscribers. Shout out to my old ones. And I hope everybody has a blessed day, a blessed week. And as always, love, peace, and music. Peace out.